global environment, activism, of course, politics to bring change and also to bring peace. So, the hands.
As long as you can hear. I'm Mona, the Paris, and I will be moderating the discussion today. We have a very effective panel who I will be producing shortly, and we also have members of the Lectio who will be performing and talking to us definitely later. To build on to what Alex was when I was a child, I used to think about beauty. And this never took me as years to like reality art is about changing ourselves and other people, our beliefs, our thoughts, our values, challenging ourselves. And basically art is political as everything is political, including art. And that's actually what we will be discussing today from various perspectives. However, first I will have to go an icebreaker review to put it to pass in the spirit. So I welcome Lars from the Flask, Rodis from the Magistralis to lead us forward.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Kaz. I have 3 poems. Sorry, and the third one is one where I'm asking a little of audience engagement. These 3 poems were written following a serious situation, which you'll hear in the first one, and it reflects getting involved and what that does to us as people. The first one is called Ode to Anna. Everyone was having a wonderful time, all crammed to the open mic in that little cafe. Then she stood up, and the whole room came to a halt. This is my last time doing this. Tomorrow I'm going to court to be sentenced. What could we do but carry on? How was that? She was gone. Banged up for this. This young woman just trying to get people to understand. It didn't touch the painting, only the glass. Just tomato soup. 20 months, no joke. I wake in the night, in my comfortable bed, thinking of her, in hers, there. An act of holiness, a singleness of purpose, a dedication to the other, for the other, on behalf of all, without thought or consequence to the self. A radical but peaceful act. Damage, the frame, the judge said, the gold leaf, and that was that. Second poem is called Priceless Sunflowers. Letter extract from Vincent van Gogh to Emile Bernard on or about Tuesday, 21st of August, 1888. Oh, the beautiful sundown in high summer, said wrote Vincent. It beats down on your head. I have no doubt at all that drives you crazy. Now, being that way already, all I do is enjoy it. I'm thinking of decorating my studio with half a dozen paintings of sunflowers. A decoration in which harsh or broken yellows will burst against various blue backgrounds. From the palest velveties to royal blue, framed with thin glass, painted in orange lead. His fervour madness, self-wounding, wrought in Arles yellow thick sun paint, chucked over that gallery lay incandescent, Confused, we witness these brazen red flags. What's for our peace? We watch by the night stars paid to illumine a vision, hardened 100 years old, suffering picture protests on flowers most costly, or era, by our scorching sun. Petals drawn for us, bare, new, or lemon, blood red drips shade, pools. Flowers cry pain, a day-night red husband setting a door on work thought secure brings damage to reasons we want to afford, now deplored. Viewers appalled, gold frame replaced. What have they missed? That puzzles a new movement in painting, not understood. Strokes poured over to wake and provoke, dare to Duncan's mindset dread relation, no more blackboards held high for them votes, but messy and ugly still stills. Hush air, red splattered, sudden wild spatter, thrown tomatoes on glass. None reads this picture, not much interest in whom or in why. This exhibition, no. Hunters continue to queue, but not to see that. Caught in the act, Pussy Riot remakes not court caged, but hard, gavelled down, down, take them down, for your sakes. The judge will not hear your non-violent defence. Silence for what you have done, that now red-smeared sacred space, our own Vincent's full-flowered sons. Not a media chorus, no call for debate, no serious late programmes examines your fate. Straight to our murals, read the small print. We are not amused. The sentence for you two is 20 and 24 months. Sudden reverse. Redirection takes place versus all those aligned prosecution case. It's an all-classes action, like complaints, hearing plaintiffs pleading guilty as charged. Quick, in-council verdict, expertly damaged, pre-sentence reports, rain, flood, fire, the least of it all, with whole of life tariffs. Generations unborn, search as they may. The pictures away, turn their face to the wall. Finally, this is a very short one, which is called print. It's all about hands. So you can do it if you want to. You can share the actions if you'd like to. Remembering that when we talk about protest, peaceful protest, put our bodies in the place. That's what the thing of the labyrinth is. So, print. Which comes first? Join me with the actions. Hand contains the full set. Maze mark taken. Inked presentation of index. After that. Or is it another way round? Index points out. Thumb held in trigger readiness. Motions to the scan. It is you, your trace, nicely ready to file before brain.
That really has put us in the frame of mind for the lecture of very much your results. Okay, back to our candidates. We have Kerer to the scene, and now I'd like to introduce yourselves to introduce yourself to you first.
Hi, good evening everyone. My name is Kurt. also I write creative writing motifs in the essay form.
Hello, I am Lucine Harazan. I come from Armenia. I'm a writer and anthropologist. I also work at Kerer University, similarly to our colleague, and I'm a researcher at the Institute of Archaeology and Ethnography.
Hi, my name is Anna Bell, and I'm a senior lecturer in modern and contemporary art at the University of New York. And I am also the co-investigator of the project Art Rights alongside my colleague Rodrigo from the Center of Applied Human Rights, an artist and filmmaker Emily Flower. The project aims to ask the question of whether the arts can save human rights, a contentious question, but they explore whether artists and activists collaborate and inform or create new languages for human rights with a capital H.
Thank you for that. We should have a more complimentary perspective. Here, question time. So, what do you believe as activism looks like in more practice, more of course,
First of all, I think activism is a very big word, right? When we hear the word, typically we understand demonstrations in the streets or something that is loud and colorful. But sometimes activism is the most boring of jobs. It's about sending an email, it's about doing admin work, it's about filing in reports. And I'd like to start by kind of devising what we mean by activism, and also kind of problematizing the idea of the art as being this figure of glory, this individualist, this visual, this hero, who by himself can save or transform the world. And I think activism, like art, is a practice, it's an activity. It brings people together in the flesh, into bodies, also online. I don't think we should be purists on whether activism should take form only through the body or through online. I think we live in a complicated world, a complex world, where art exists alongside other forms, other practices, including writing, including singing, dancing, or other forms of human activity. So the way I approach the relationship between art and activism is as plural activity that brings people together, brings people with different languages, different forms of expressing themselves, and engage ultimately with the world. Both art and activism have this thing which is engagement with the world and with caring about the world. And you only care for something if you are immersed in it and want to persist in it. And I think that both activism and art demonstrate this willingness to persist.
I follow up on that one before. I also have said that anyone who would like to intervene or ask a question, whatever, this is not like an interrogation, feel free to do that with, try to perform the mic whenever. So you said that obviously art and activism have been common. Are all artists activists? Or should they?
The answer is a no and no, but there are different kinds of no's. I think evidently not all artists are activists. That is a descriptive question. But the normative question whether artists political is, I think, complicated. And I think my own views have shifted often. Perhaps when I was younger, perhaps also because I looked up to artists and was perhaps more influenced by artists. I look at people I admire in order to help orient myself and my beliefs in the world. I think that was my outlook maybe 5 or 10 years ago. My own views have shifted on this. Personally, I find it, first of all, just to go back a bit, one's political stance is not just about what one explicitly says, right? Even not saying something is a form of political statement in itself. So, to some extent, it's inescapable. Power and politics are inescapable things. And of course, different artists negotiate this question differently. Some explicitly foreground the political stakes of their work for various reasons, because of where they are working from, because who they are, and as we said again, everything is political, including one's identity. So obviously, identity is inescapable. So we're writing from somewhere, and indeed for some, due to who they are, the fact that they're writing or doing art is already a statement in itself. So that's already a very immediate way in which one's work is political. But art need not be preachy. Some people think that to be political means that your work has to something to do with it. It has to inform political practice immediately and directly. And that's not always the political gesture that art does. Sometimes art has the luxury to slow down. The tempo of politics tends to be fast, whereas the tempo of art is different. The temporality of art is different. It can be slower, it can hit you differently, it can introduce more nuance. So the way in which we do politics, the way in which we argue politically, sometimes forces us to perhaps generalize or be more solid for certainty. Whereas art affords us ambiguity, it affords us ambivalence, it affords us the ability to inhabit different, sometimes contradictory subject positions. And that can push forward the debate. One of the problems, I think, in the world politically, that, for example, various debates, be they debates on gender, be they debates on Palestine, be they debates on whatever, the environment, we're surrounded with categorical views and hard opinions. And sometimes the power of art is not to fight even harder, but to be softer and do politics in a softer register. And that can be getting the power of art.
So you can say art doesn't have to be because there is this popular conception that art and activism is like as a sport, for instance, and showing papers or making noise in the street, or that it can be more behind the scenes and you see the activism and an artist.
I think so. I don't need to buy one's better than the other. I still think that throwing paint artworks can be important. That sometimes is the right way to go. But I think that practice in itself, the paint throwing, has to coexist alongside other political interventions. So, be it the gesture of throwing paint, as the longer read, someone writing a detailed essay, outlining the rationale or something. And I think activism, in fact, has to be going forward about finding ways how these alliances can be created. There's a discourse which can say, or should say, the full story, or provide the full diagnosis. I think going forward, good activism has to be about connecting these different registers.
I want to receive for a second, because I saw you more when Kerer was talking about how this perception of the artist as an activist has changed through the years, and would you like to add anything to that? So what are you doing?
Yeah, I think for me also it has changed a bit. I agree with many things that Kurt has said, but I'd like maybe to add or expand on that also. I think it's, we often, particularly now, expect that art which is linked to activism needs to be political or needs to make some kind of statement or provoke a discussion or challenge whatever is universally thought. So there is this, I would say, somehow thinking towards art which is related to activism that many of us kind of expect. But from my experience in recent years, from my particular context from Armenia, I see that this is changing a bit because we do believe that activists and artists are working together to bring about change in our particular political context, and it was until 2018 when a revolution happened, and many believed that was because of activists and artists working together and challenging, like producing, doing a lot of performancing, challenging the system, street art, which wouldn't be preachy, but which would suggest that you need to change the corrupt system, you need to make a revolution to bring about change. So that actually happened, and like in 2018, we were protesting, really like majority population was protesting on the streets, and it was very peaceful protesting form which had a lot of art in it, not only coming from artists, but also coming from people, and there were many different types of performances brought by from villagers, I don't know, every people and artists. So it was a very artsy revolution with many, for example, we had this really performance like at every, like in a certain time during the day, everybody would bring out their pots and kettles and would really do things showing their support to revolution, and it was very artsy. There are many examples of it and the ways of showing that they are for revolution. So that was, and that is what people believed, that okay, this ongoing involvement of artists and also activists in bringing about change made it possible. However, since then, things have changed in my particular context. Like we had a war after it in 2020, maybe some of you know, it's the ongoing Nagorno-Karabakh conflict. So we had a war and many people died during the war, and it changed also artists, the way they used to challenge the government. So some of the artists who brought about the revolution, who were part of it and so on, they are now not doing any protesting against whatever there is, government says, and this is perceived by people like something unusual, because before the revolution, it would be the artists who would really provoke and challenge the conversation and make usually not spoken, more spoken out or showed, and finding these different ways of really telling things, maybe sometimes very openly, but sometimes very subtly, as art does usually. And now it's a very interesting divide between part of artists who do not criticize the government stance after the war, and there is this part of artists who shifted more towards nationalist demand of not going towards peaceful negotiations and doing different type of things that they wouldn't do before. So what I'm trying to say is that when political context changed, behavior of artists and also the ways they would do things also changed in my particular context. And it's interesting to observe how much how much politics is involved in what artists do, and how much artists are involved in what politics does. And it's always this very thin line between two, I think, and it's interesting to observe how, because of our own stances, we can take a certain position and choose not to challenge or provoke the ongoing political line, or to challenge and provoke more. So it is always very interesting to see how this changes based on the situation that is also constantly changing. But just to add something, I think another major thing for me, and I think we could be, for me, art is also the space that provides an opportunity for polyvocality. And that is what makes reality not simple and just like one-line story, but what makes possible of understanding the diversity of the very thing that is happening now, and the life and the experience. So that, to me, is also very important when speaking about art and activism, because these can take various forms and various, also, I don't know.
I want a lot of facts to tell you, and I also for you not. How do you perceive this identity, this artist as an activist?
Yeah, in some ways, yes, but I think that we are more fixated into the categories when we think about this, in a way, inherited colonial notion of art. I guess this particular thing created by this particular media. So if we have a more expanded version or vision of what art is or can be or can do, maybe the boundaries are less marked between an artist and an activist.
It's interesting. I'd like to ask you, would you view yourself as an artist, as an activist, as both? Applying your persona that takes over depending on the context or what's happening around you, the situation, your country, or it's always a consistent kind of identity perspective?
I think there's someone who wants to say something. I think it's really largely context-based because I think art and activism and the boundaries of those are really different in different continents, different contexts. From within the project, we have interviewed since the beginning very many different artists, activists, or artivists. And something that struck me at the beginning was like we would ask this very question: "Oh, do you consider yourself an artist or an activist?" And they would be like, "No, I'm an artist. Activist. Those people are killed in my country." So for some people, it's been a safety mechanism. But in some other contexts, for example, in Uganda, we work quite a lot with artists from Uganda. And traditionally, it's not greatly perceived to be an artist. You're perceived as someone who couldn't do anything else or couldn't do anything better. So one of the artists that we were interviewing was saying, for me, it's been great because they already think I'm crazy. So that allows me to a bit fly under the radar, to be a bit, oh, this is the crazy one. What does she have to say? So it's less of a threat in some ways. In other contexts, artists are heavily repressed. So I think it's also a lot like depending on the context that we're working with those boundaries. Sorry, did you want to say something?
Well, I want to continue on all your points actually, because I've been absorbing your arguments, and they, like you said earlier, they're complementary, but they're somewhat different as well. And what I noticed particularly is instead of focusing on whether someone is an artist or not, let's talk about art instead, about how art has the potential to be political. And this potential varies by context, meaning that each context has a number of conflicting narratives within it. And the nature of the conflicts across these narratives generates the need of whether art needs to be used as a medium to present, to offer dissent or not. For example, in a country in which the narratives, the battle between narratives is tumultuous, then there is often the need to voice views, concerns, movement through art. When it's not so tumultuous, when it's sunshine and rainbows, art is commissioned. Art is used as a leisure activity. Art is used as a way to show excess. And this is very evident. For example, let's talk about peak time Roman Empire. Let's talk about the peak times of the mornings of Europe. And then let's talk about the art generated by the revolutions across Europe. It's high and it's low, but at each end of the polar, it's it's a myriad of artistic quality and artistic diversification. So I hope I came across in a way that everyone understood me. And I want to hear your thoughts about it, if you have a chance to edit the questions you have.
Thank you for that. Would that be a situation where in times of, in the good times, there's a certain type of art created, like in times of strife and conflict and more difficult times, the nature of the art and of the way artists operate is changing according to the national or historic context.
Not the motivation.
And the motivation. It's like, sorry.
I want to argue that a bit because I come from a used to be part of the USSR, which was a very authoritarian country and so on, but it used to really commission art. So the main thing would be socialist realism, and everybody would be in that realm. And many artists would really, really do great within that officially sanctioned art. And there would be, on the surface, you wouldn't really see resistance, even though there would be smaller places where the resisting art would actually exist and would bring about change eventually. What I mean, so politically, like the country itself, within it, it would be more or less stable situation economically, more or less, well, there would not be a freedom of speech, there would be a lot of human rights violations and so on, but the official top-down thing would be to commission certain types of art. I mean, so the type of art we spoke about that kings would commission and so on, and some artists would do very well within that. But still, there would be this resistance art, which would eventually bring about change, which would also make people think about the other possibilities. So I would say that to me, both things always probably exist. So whatever we speak with any system, there will always be something that would protest that system and that would produce something and would challenge that